Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and I'm really pleased to be here and be actually in person in front of folks. It feels a bit strange, but I'm sure it's like riding a bike. I'll get right back into it. I'm excited about presenting what our partnership that we formed with Accessibility Services, and I think this is one of those really wonderful, fortuitous partnerships that comes together to support both students and instructors as they navigate pretty unfamiliar waters. So we've got a bit of an agenda. So we're gonna talk. Mike's going to sort of introduce what he is going to talk about with respect to remote accommodation. I'm going to introduce to you Tech to You, and that's actually an initiative that formed throughout the pandemic and is pretty key to what we want to do here. And then we're going to talk a bit about the impact of that, and then there's going to be a bit of a housekeeping announcement at the end. We had actually, when we thought about this presentation, we thought it was going to be a very interactive and kick the tires kind of thing, but when we saw that there was only 30 minutes, we thought, no, we're not going to do that. But what it did enable us is, and with Allison's very generous support, we've actually created an open house where you can drop in to talk to our folks and really kick the tires and spend time and walk around the station. So that's going to be the interactive part of what we're doing. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Mike to walk us through the remote accommodation.
Okay, thank you, Steve. As Steve discussed, remote accommodation is something that happened to us very quickly, and some major partnerships, LSM being the key partner, had to be developed. Basically, once U of T transitioned from being a fully virtual online situation during the pandemic to coming back to in-person learning, remote accommodation very quickly became part of the discussion and the accommodation tools that Accessibility Services had available to us. The only issue is we didn't know exactly what our tools were or how to use our tools, but we did know that the pandemic brought a lot of really interesting technology and approaches that were now available to us and that students were asking for, and in many cases quite legitimately and appropriately asking for. So really, remote accommodation became a whole new category for students who, for a variety of reasons, could not be on campus. So probably about 50% of those students were situations around, initially maybe closer to 60, 70%. A lot of it was around students who had immunocompromised issues. So these were students who perhaps were on certain medications that left them immunocompromised. There were certain students, for various health reasons, COVID vaccines were not did not have the same effect for them. Cancer treatments, these types of things that were leaving students immunocompromised in various stages. So that was a big part of our work, but a smaller part of our work was we had students who had very significant barriers to participation in person. These could be anything from very serious physical limitations. We had one particular student who had come through surgery and was sort of in a situation of being bedridden 22 out of 24 hours a day. These types of situations where no matter what accommodation we had traditionally available to us that we had evolved over the last 30 years of in-person participation just wouldn't apply and wouldn't be applicable to the student. And it really was a choice for the student between attendance in the university and not attending in the university. So having these new tools developed during the pandemic became something that was available to us and something students were asking for, and something in a few limited cases we were applying. So remote accommodation, it is very much a form of temporary accommodation as well. It's something we do term by term by term. And it's something reviewed constantly. It could be for labs, it could be for tutorials, it could be for assessments and tests, it could be for practicum placements, really any kind of activity or duty or obligation a student might be taking part in through the university. So just in terms of the stats, you can see sort of through fall and winter of this past year, just the numbers we were dealing with and then broken down by faculty. And in a sense, it doesn't look like a large number of students. We have about 6,100 students registered last year, or this past year, with Accessibility Services St. George, so we're talking about 0.01%. of all students having remote accommodations, but you can imagine each one of these students will have 4 or 5 classes attached to them, and each one of these, and Steve will be talking about this in a lot more detail, this isn't a plug-and-play situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation. Each one of these courses and each one of these remote accommodations involves very significant discussions with instructors about what the goals or the aims of the course are that they're trying to accomplish, the teaching methods, the learning methods, and trying to figure out what type of remote accommodation options or resources could be applied to the situation to make it work for everybody. It is, generally speaking, you'll see a large number of declined requests. Traditionally for us, we are trying, as an accessibility office, to find ways for students to participate in the learning environment in the way the learning environment was designed. So if the learning environment is designed to be in person, it's our first goal to find a way to accommodate so that the student can be there in person as the course was designed to be and participate fully as any other student and have the same opportunity for success as any other student. But again, some accommodation requests start there. We find alternatives outside of remote accommodation. Others, it just is the actual best solution and the most applicable solution, and that's where we arrive at.
So a bit of an explanation of what is Tech to You. And Tech to You sort of evolved out of discussions we were having around the Transforming the Instructional Landscape project. And as part of that project, we were really engaging with the community, students, instructors, support folks, about what makes a good learning environment, what makes good instructional spaces. And one of the things that sort of came out of that is this concept around humanizing that experience and developing kind of learner-centered design principles at which we approach our instructional spaces. So when we started thinking about that, it really sort of evolved around the tech support aspect. And just as a bit of a sort of a contrast, prior to Tech to You, our approach to classroom technical support was we put equipment in the classroom, we create it so that it's user-friendly and it's rock solid, and then we leave you alone. So the instructor comes in, they're supposed to know how to use it. If there's a problem, we then rush in a reactive mode to help them solve the problem. That met a large number of folks and served us really quite well. But it also created this feeling from our community that they were somewhat alone at the front of the room, that the burden of the technical support and anything that goes wrong fell fully on them. And we recognize as we move forward, and certainly with the pandemic, that this reliance on technology it shifted from a nice to have or a nice thing to be able to support to a pretty critical aspect of the learning experience. And so with that in mind, we really wanted to sort of revamp our technical support to sort of look at focus on what the instructor was trying to do, what the students were trying to engage. And in a sense, the room becomes a bit of a backdrop. It doesn't become a driver. And in many senses, we wanted to create spaces where the technology in the room did not limit what the instructor wanted to do. And so how were we going to do that? Well, one of the things is we need to actually create a bit of an inventory of technical equipment that we could bring in. But that actually only solved the kind of the nuts and bolts pieces of it. What we quickly realized through our discussions from Till is each instructor's journey with their students is as individual as the pedagogy, is as individual as the instructor is. And so we needed to create a support model that recognized that individuality. And so that's really where Tech to You kind of evolved from. So officially we humanize technical support to foster excellence and innovative teaching. As I said, increasingly in a technological classroom. These are must-haves, these are not nice-to-haves anymore. But it's really about this providing real-time personalized technological support. This idea that we then become partners with the instructor and the students in their learning journey. The previous approach was we were very much, we only came in if there was a file. We thought that with Tech2U, we thought there might be a real value in actually sort of partnering with the instructor. And in a sense, the idea here is removing that technological burden from the instructor. Well, with that in mind, one of the things that, next slide. So really the impact for our instructors is really meeting instructors where they are. And I really, really like that statement because what it sort of works on two levels. One, it actually says that we're going to meet them in the classroom because that's where they're going to be engaging with their students. And so really creates that sort of partnership. But it also talks about where they are in their journey, in their spectrum of around comfort with technology and whatever. And so if people are very nervous about technology, well, we can support them doing that. If they're very confident in technology and want to take it further, we can actually support that. So it's this concept here of not only physically meeting them where they are, but also where they are in their journey around with technology and learning. And this idea of trying to find new things, you know, getting instructors to feel confident to experiment, try new things, and really that partnership idea. And then there's also the getting them you know, physically bringing in the equipment and helping them to support that. And this idea that we're co-creating their technological solution in the classroom. So we become then partners with the work that they're doing in the classroom and really creating that trust and support model.
Okay, so in terms of our approach to remote accommodation, what is the process? So first we have the student has accessibility needs and they require a remote accommodation. They will of course approach accessibility services, and accessibility services will vet and do some consultations with the student to understand their needs. They will then of course connect with us to let us know, you know, for this particular course that a student is enrolled in, and this is the instructor providing us with the details around the course and the instructor to let us know that that particular, there is a remote accommodation for that particular class. So once that is done, we will of course connect with our LSM's Tech2U team. Our Tech2U team is a team full of AV experts, and our AV experts will connect with the instructor directly to do a service consult of sorts to understand what their teaching needs are and align that with the remote accommodation needs and provide a variety of viable solutions. So some of those solutions could be in the room itself. So we do have in-room AV capabilities. If that is not a viable option, there are also options provided to deliver portable assets, so portable technological assets to the room that can be integrated into our AV equipment that will also support remote accommodation needs. Next slide. Okay, so working with the instructor, we essentially co-create a solution that, of course, does not compromise the instructor's teaching needs, and it does not compromise the student's learning needs. From there, we ensure that the support is put into place for the course class times, ensuring that we have a technician on site to be able to provide that support if needed to set up the relevant technologies for that classroom. And from there, it's really a go, go, go. And yeah, so that's essentially allowing our instructors to focus on the teaching part of the experience and not to worry about the technology in the classroom and its particular limitations.
Thank you, Swati. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Mike. And basically, I'm so happy that we were able to take you through a journey of what the need is, how it is identified, how solutions are co-created, and what is the process of actually requesting a remote accommodation service. I'm so grateful that I actually get to show you the cool stuff. So imagine you have a student who cannot come to the class for a particular course. And instead of having them join in an asynchronous learning format, you have an option of actually booking what is called a Tech2U PC. That's the PC on wheels, all right? And you can download your preferred the software like Zoom or MS Teams, you can send that ID to the student and you can literally beam them in. So like each one of you is sitting on a seat, we can have a Tech2U PC connected and they can actually attend this whole experience live. They can ask questions, so there is microphone, there is camera, there is face-to-face interactive ability that is possible. Now, let's reverse the situation where an instructor who is not able to be present in the room live, now you can actually then add to the Tech2U PC what is called a Yamaha soundbar, the one that is on a tripod. And it has a wide-angle camera, it has a very sensitive microphone, and it has speakers where it will allow whoever is virtually connecting to look at the audience and interact as if they were here for real. All right? And this is just a very, very small application. Please head over to My Hall 360, just like 2 stairs up, and we have an entire demonstration going on with our team of technical experts. Then we do have a session presentation. I believe it is it is here at 11:40. It's about the OpenCast content capture system. Basically on any full-size teaching station. Again, if you'd like to know more, just head up. We are going to be there till 3:30. And we will be able to tell you about how you can book the OpenCast content capture system, how once you have booked it, it will automatically start recording at your class time, 10 minutes after your class time, and how it will also allow you to capture the content and then share it with your students for those who cannot attend the session live, and it allows you to teach, and it allows your students to learn synchronously as well as asynchronously. And third, and this is where we have gone one step over and above the content capture system. So basically, the content capture is going on, and we have added a camera with an expert who will be recording you, and this works very, very well when you have demonstrations, experiments, or any sort of learning material which is extremely interactive and visual in nature that just cannot be captured by a slide deck on the side. Once again, all cool stuff. MY360, just 2 stories up from here. And I'm so happy I will be also able to show you 2 examples about how the assisted media remote accommodation services work. So this is basically capturing the chemistry tutorial. It's just chalk and board, but you'll see how important it is.
So, what we're going to start off by looking at is a cyclic process of an ideal gas. And then in particular, we are going to look at the Carnot cycle. It's got a few interesting properties. One is that it's really annoying to try and draw on the board, because I have to find a way to make all 4 of these curves different. The Carnot cycle, specifically a fully reversible Carnot cycle of an ideal gap.
And then we have one more, which actually shows you a demonstration along with what the OpenCast screen is capturing. So these are merged after the class, and we do provide the post-production support where we are able to integrate these 2, the content capture and your live video, and then provide you within 24 hours of your class time. Once again, please be mindful, all these services are provided once we understand your needs, your students' needs, and then we support you with the appropriate support. So please watch this one.
Just before it hits the floor, 45-degree angle, going down and to the right. So 5 meters per second to the right, 5 meters per second down. is up to keep the same x component of velocity, but it reverses the y component, not quite fully. It's y. Anyway, question, we're going to ask two questions. One is, what's the impulse, x impulse, and then, which the impulse, by the way, is the same change in momentum. And then the second question will be what's the y.
All right, and that's really about what the recordings are here. It's just to sample. Again, you can take, this is just a sample. You can actually enjoy our buffet of technology support. Just head up to 360. I keep repeating myself. But we do have a couple of minutes for any questions or comments, and I also would like to invite my teammates to answer your questions as well. So please go ahead.
To help them, maybe like their computer isn't up to the specs and they didn't plan for that. So do you ever accommodate anyone on the other end, if you know what I mean?
So just to repeat your question, if I understand correctly, you're asking about whether we, what accommodations you provide to students in their home, and do we get into providing students accommodations within their homes to allow them to engage remotely, I'm assuming is sort of the framework.
Yes and no. So most of the types of, and I'm going to look at Steve just to double check my facts here, but I think most of what we're setting up for students, I think an average laptop, computer, or home system would be able to navigate. We do have adaptive technologists working within accessibility services who will work with the student if there is some sort of special software or something like that that would need to be installed to complement what was being provided. And in certain cases, if there is sort of a situation around financial need, there's the bursary for students with disabilities, which will often provide special assistance funding for students if they need a computer with more RAM or more speed or more sort of technology or power to sort of operate. And if need be, the university will sort of support that if there's a financial need on the part of the student to set that up. But it's not something I found that has come up very much. Most students will have a laptop or a computer, and most of the time it will operate. But in those rare situations, that is something accessibility services through our adaptive technologists will work with the student and ensure that, you know, no kind of financial limitation or something like that would be a barrier to getting this set up.
Thank you for the information. I adore tech to you as an instructor. I'm wondering, are there plans going forward to develop a teaching assistant login portal as well? I'm just thinking about teaching assistants often also needing support, meaning where the teaching assistants are at in these learning environments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think in many senses we want to create a system that's agnostic to what your category is. It's really about teaching and learning, and how do we enable that? And so absolutely, I think some of the limitations so far have been infrastructural ones that we're sort of working with various stakeholders around how to overcome it. A lot of this is about, we talk a lot about asking people to put their requests in, but to be honest, a lot of the discovery around Tech to You is instructors know what they want to do. They don't necessarily know how they want to get there. And so I think part of that, part of that next evolution is to sort of understand what does that journey look like? Who are the partners involved? I see lots of my colleagues from CTSI, and how can we sort of interleave, their expertise and their input into all of this. So I do think that there's a lot of potential here. Just sort of to take a bit of a side journey, or not a side journey, but a bit of a side benefit for this, and this is one that we found through a particular course. We had, when the remote accommodation came forward, there was a certain amount of trepidation that the instructor had. there's a certain amount of preconceived notions they had coming to the table. And the beauty of this model is we were able to kind of get beyond that, working with Mike's team as well as ours. And then one of the really wonderful kind of side benefits of all of this is the material that we were actually creating for the students' remote accommodation then became available to the entire class. So I actually think there was a bit of a win-win in that situation. And we went from an instructor who was extremely resistant to providing any sort of content capture outside of their lecture to now providing free and open and unfettered access to content capture, which I think had the remote accommodation not come forward, I'm fairly certain that conversation wouldn't have happened. So I do think in many senses this is part of an opening of a dialogue with lots of different sort of viewpoints and stakeholders involved. And I think, you know, one thing that Mike said that really resonates is that there isn't one size fits all, and certainly for accommodation, we know and live that daily. But I actually think that that extends to the learning environment.